deathless titans placed upon the face of the earth 3 generations of men. The first of them being the men of gold. Becoming too close to gods themselves, Cronus ended their time on earth with an eternal sleep. A second generation came to be, the men of silver. Unwilling to serve the titans and make sacrifices upon the holy altars, as all men shall do, they were condemned to dwell under the earth for all eternity. Finally, a third generation, the men of bronze, a brazen race, sprung from the ash tree. Terrible and strong are they. Join me as I tell you the tales of the men of bronze. This is Dragon's Blood. Beware Brontes. Episode 23. Mutalu and the 4 travelers made their way east on the road to Azerta for at least 2 more hours. Sunisret slept the entire way in the back of the wagon, while Gamden, Akum, and Minkari talked the rest of the way. Mutalu softly sang his favorite rambling song, which probably helped Sunisret sleep down the bumpy road. Slowly, Mutalu brought the wagon to a stop and said out loud, "Here it is. This is where we leave the main road," pointing off to his left, where tall trees and dense brush allowed no egress. Akum rode up to the front of the wagon, stopped, looked around, then said with a warning in his voice, "There is no trail leading off the main road here. Only tall trees and thick brush." He waved his arm to encompass the entire scene. "You led us into a trap." Akum dismounted, drew his sword, and readied his shield for the attack he was sure to come. His horse began to fidget and neigh loudly, sensing the readiness for battle in Akum. With all the noise, Sunisret woke from his slumber, poking his head above the driver's seat, and asked in a groggy voice, "What's going on? Why did we stop?" "Get your weapon and help me defend us from the attack," Akum shouted over his shoulder. Sunisret, now fully erect in the cargo box, looked around, scratched his head, then asked, "Who's attacking us?" Gamden dismounted, walked over to Akum, and said in a reassuring voice, "There is no attack coming. We can trust Mutalu. He is our friend." Slowly, Akum started to relax from his battle-ready stance and sheathed his sword, slinging his shield back over his shoulder. Mutalu, still sitting on the driver's seat of the wagon, had turned as pale as a ghost from the sudden fury. Akum, looking Gamden in the eye, said, "I trust you, and if you say that you trust Mutalu, then I will trust him too." Turning to face Mutalu, he said, "I hope you can forgive my behavior." Akum held out his hand in friendship. Mutalu exhaled a loud sigh of relief, and the color returned to his face. Taking Akum's hand in goodwill, he said, "I have seen many soldiers at the roadhouse over the years, but you were the first to truly frighten me. You had the look of a wild animal in your eyes. I believe you would have fought like a titan till your last breath." Quickly changing the subject, Gamden asked, "So where is the trail that leaves the main road?" "Yes, let's go home," Mutalu said with a smile. He stood, holding his arms wide open, and spoke a phrase that only Minkari understood. Immediately, the branches of the tall trees creaked and groaned, then lifted up to allow them passage, while the dense brush laid down upon the ground, making for a smooth path. "The language of the centaurs! The language of the centaurs!" Menkari gasped in amazement. How do you know their language? That's all that Papa taught me. Just enough to clear the path to come and go from the compound. Mutalu sat back down, took the reins in hand and continued, Papa trades with the centaurs. Menkari rode up beside the driver's seat and asked Mutalu, May I sit up front with you? I don't take up much room, and I have questions for you. Yes, I would like that very much. He slid over and patted the seat. Menkari urged his horse close to the wagon and held out his arms for Mutalu to pick him up. With a snap of the reins, the horses pulled the wagon into the forest. Gamden and Akum fell in behind, with Merritt keeping pace. Mutalu was besieged by questions. His response to all but one question was, You'll see when we get there. The one answer he gave that was different. It's not too far into the forest at all. The timberland that surrounded them was dense and dark. Gamden tried to look into the tree line, but could only see shadows and gloom. As they advanced, the trees parted for them and swallowed the path behind them. I've been here before, but I've never been here. I know this for sure, muttered Gamden to himself. After just a few minutes longer, the path opened up into a vast clearing in the forest. Gamden looked behind him and watched the trees and brush leave no trace of the path they just traveled. Everyone shielded their eyes from the sun after the darkness of the forest. Everything is so familiar, but I know I've never been here before, muttered Gamden again. What did you say? Asked Sunisret. Oh, it's this place, explained Gamden. I have a queer feeling about this place. Every fiber of my being tells me I've been here before, but I know that I haven't. You don't look so good, replied Sunisret. You're as white as a bedsheet. I'll be okay. Just give me a minute. Ahead of them in the distance, large buildings signaled the existence of civilization. Fenced-off sections of the grassland divided the farms from the industrial and the living quarters. A river meandered across the clearing in the general direction of the compound. When it approached the industrial section of the compound, an earthen dam system was built to power large water wheels. The closer that Gamden got to the destination, an overpowering sense of déjà vu fell over him. With it came a feeling of nausea and dizziness. Sunisret noticed this and got out of the wagon and walked beside Gamden, keeping a close eye on him. Menkari continued to ask questions non-stop, and the answer every time was, Papa will tell you all you want to know. Entering the main compound was like being in a bustling small town. People walked about, tending to their business, or visiting with friends. When Sunisret walked by, everyone stopped and took notice of the giant stranger walking down the main street. With Mutalu leading the way, people knew that the strangers were here for a reason. They had to be here for a reason, because no one new ever came to their settlement. The party made their way down the main street to its terminus, where a sizable brick building stopped them in their tracks. A large patio shaded the main door that creaked open at their arrival. Gamden slurred his words as he said out loud, This is all too much. It's like I'm moving around in a dream that I have no control over, but I know it's going to happen. Everyone stopped what they were doing to look at Gamden and wait for what he was about to say. Gamden closed his eyes for a second, and when he opened them, he said, "An old man with 2 canes will walk out and tell us that he is the blind inventor." Gamden slumped forward in his saddle, unconscious for a moment, and almost fell to the ground. Catching him in his arms, Sunisret gently lay him on the steps leading to the patio. Gamden, looking up, saw an old man with 2 canes looking down at him as he said, "Hello, I am the blind inventor." Darkness washed over Gamden as he slipped into unconsciousness for several hours. Look for episode 24 of Dragon's Blood, Beware Brontes, on YouTube.